Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 12 of the video series where I critique and process your image. In this episode, we're taking a look at this long exposure image from Zoran. Now, Zoran told me that he used a 10-stop ND filter. And what you'll find when you use ND filters, they'll often give your image a color cast. And in this case, you could see it has a very strong color cast. And it's been my experience when using ND filters from B&W and Hoya, they tend to give you like an orange coppery color cast. But when using an ND filter from Lee, they're more of a blue or purplish color cast. Either way, they can be very challenging to get rid of. But the effect you get by using the ND filter is unrivaled. By using this ND filter, Zoran was able to shoot a 3-second exposure. So that's telling you that really the scene was pretty well lit. It was pretty bright. And if shot without the ND filter, all this water would have been just frozen in place. And it gives a much different look when you could get this long exposure and get the water to really smooth out like this. Now, as far as the camera settings, he was at f14. And I talk in every episode about the sweet spot of a camera lens, and that's when the camera lens performs at its best and when it's at its sharpest. And it's 2 to 4 stops up from wide open. And on this lens, it's a 17 to 50 f at 2.8. Wide open is 2.8. So 2 to 4 stops. At 4 stops would have been f11. He's at f14. He's a little bit more than that. So it's starting to be at the point where the lens is going to start to diffract a little bit and it won't be as sharp as possible. But you have trade-offs in photography. Zoran had to really get to f14 because he was at the lowest setting, natural setting the ISO could go on this camera. It was a Nikon D7100, I think. So he was at the lowest natural ISO setting and he needed a long exposure to really smooth out that water. So at f14, he was able to get 3 seconds. So that's a trade-off. He had to probably go with a bit of a smaller aperture than he wanted to use in order to get the shutter speed he needed to get the smooth water. So it worked out well. No problem with that. Really well done. The composition itself I really like a lot. We have this kind of rock in the foreground, and it's kind of in the corner. And it gives a nice firm base. And I always talk about it's nice to get lines in your image. And if you could get diagonal lines, that always works real well. It's a nice compositional element in an image. And this image has what I call soft diagonals. And soft diagonals, if you look, the way the water is streaming into this rock that's in the corner, especially over here in the lower left-hand part of the image, you could see that the water is streaming into this corner. That's what I call a soft diagonal. So we have soft diagonals coming through the image, and that's real pleasing to look at. So it's a nice feature of this shot. So I like the image a lot. I like the composition a lot. The settings on the camera were fine. It's time to process it. Now, I mentioned we get these color casts when we use ND filters. Not all the times. It depends on the light that's in the scene, how much of a color cast you'll get, and it depends on the filter, as I mentioned. Now, what we're going to do first, I am going to go to lens corrections, and I'm just going to correct the lens corrections first. And actually, excuse me, before I even do anything, I just want to note down here that I have a virtual copy that I'm working on. It's just easier than to show you the before and after if I have a virtual copy. I'm not sure if I'm going to send this image over into any plugin. I am going to do complete processing in Lightroom, but if I do send it in the plugin, it is much easier to have virtual copies to show you the different versions of the image. So on this virtual copy, I am going to enable the profile corrections. So we did that. Now, we got to correct for this color cast, but I think before I do that, it's just because the sensor spots or these are actually probably water droplets that are on the lens themselves or itself or on the filter of the lens. I want to get rid of those. So I'm going to get the spot removal tool. And if you down here, this is called the toolbar down at the bottom. If you don't see that, hit the T bar the T key on your keyboard, and it will toggle that on and off. And what you could do if you click right here, visualize spots, you'll get this kind of weird negative image, and you could better see some of these sensor spots, and it might help in a lot of instances for you to really find these sensor spots. And you could move this slider to change the intensity of this effect. Right now I'll just leave it off because they are pretty obvious, but I did want to show you that. So we're just going to pick the sensor spots. I'm in clone mode. I have feathering all the way up and opacity all the way up. And I'm just going to wipe out some of these spots. Now I'm calling them sensor spots, but I suspect they're more likely water spots on the filter itself from the waves and the whatnot. Now we have a sensor spot there, but I can't get at it. We have a sensor spot there, but I can't get at it because I have this this tool overlay in the way. So we could go down here on this toolbar where it says tool overlay. We could change that to never, and then I could better get at these sensor spots here. So quickly, I don't know if that's a sensor spot there or not, but we'll try to get rid of those. And then I always put that back to auto. There's the sensor spots. So at least for now, I'm done with that. Now we have to deal with this color cast. The thing I found when you have an ND filter and you have these color cast, if you go to the white balance drop down now, you think, well, if I change it to shade, it usually will make it a lot warmer, and it should correct for that color cast. And what you'll find is usually nothing much will happen here as far as making it warm enough. Go to auto even. You can see even made it cooler. So if that's the look you want, you want to give maybe a twilight look to the image, then that's fine. But I really prefer to correct this color cast as much as possible. So I'm going to get the eyedropper tool, and I'm going to look for something that's medium gray to white in the image. So I should say white to medium gray. That usually will give you a good reference so that you'll get a nice rendering of the image with the correct light. Now, one thing that a person commented, and I believe it was Marty, and if I have the name wrong, who commented it, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure it was Marty, and he made a good point. If you look at the bottom of this little box that's by the dropper, you could see it has values for red, green, and blue. Right now it's showing red at 59.8, green at 61.5, and blue at 80.7. If you try to get all three of those around 75, that's the most optimum point to click to get a good white balance in the scene. Now you'd have to hunt around quite a bit and try to find something in the image that is 75, 75, 75. And you're never ever probably going to find something that is perfectly 75, 75, 75. So you're just going to try to get as close as possible. And actually right where I started out, right around here, was probably pretty much the best. So I'm just going to click right there. So it made it, as you can see, considerably warmer. It still doesn't look perfect, but if I look over at the temperature and tint sliders, you'll see that temp is pegged out at 50,000. I cannot get that any warmer. I just cannot. If I wanted to, I could not get that any warmer because the temp slider is pegged out. Now, to me this is okay. All right, so I'm gonna deal with it here. Now, if this still isn't warm enough for you, or if it's the opposite and it pegged out on the other side and it was too warm and you were trying to make it cooler, there is a trick, and I've mentioned this in several videos, of what you could do on how you could double up some of these basic panel adjustments. So what you do is you get the graduated filter tool. We're going to reset it so all the settings are in the middle, except for one setting. I'm going to take exposure all the way down just so you could see what I'm trying to show you. Now, typically you would take a graduated filter and you would go somewhere in the image and you just draw straight down or straight up, and you're actually putting a graduated effect on the image. But there is a way to get the graduated filter to affect the entire image more or less evenly. And the way to do that is you go to one extreme corner of the image. Now I'm going to go to the lower right hand corner. And you click right there with the left mouse button and just drag off the image. You could see that because I have exposure all the way down, the entire image is black. So I actually applied a graduated filter over this entire image, and it's more or less even. So I'm going to put exposure back in the middle where it belongs. Now, the reason why we did this is because just in case you felt that it still wasn't warm enough, you could add this graduated filter. You could go up here to the temp slider, and then you could move it to the right and make it warmer still or cooler or whatever. Now it isn't as strong as the temperature slider is in the basic panel. As you can see, it's more subtle, and that's pretty much what a graduated filter's effects are, more subtle. But you could always double it up if you wanted to. So you could do another one and just, duplicate it. Now, as I mentioned in this image, I didn't think I really needed to do it, so I'm going to delete it. But that gives you an idea how you could double up any of these or most of these basic panel sliders, is use that graduated filter and draw out from the corner. It is going to be more subtle though. Okay, so I have the white balance as good as I think I could make it. All right, so let's process it as we normally would. Highlights, I'm going to pull down till here, let's put highlights back in the middle. If you look in here, it's pretty smooth, right? But you'll see when I take highlights down, we're getting some subtle detail to come out. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to take highlights down. You can see we're starting to get some more subtle detail in here. And that's what I'm looking for. So just bring highlights down till we get some subtle detail showing through down in here in the brighter parts of the image. Then for shadows, I'm going to open those up until I could see some stuff in here. Now, the image looks real flat now, but that's okay. I'm going to be adding clarity and some contrast via the tone curve. So I'm going to go to the tone curve now, and I'm going to try medium contrast. Now I'm in the point curve. I got emails. If your tone curve doesn't look like this, if you click right here, you probably have a tone curve that looks like this. This is called the region curve. There's actually kind of two tone curves in Lightroom, two versions of the tone curve in Lightroom. This is the region curve. You could go here and do medium contrast, strong contrast. I usually have mine in the point curve. This is called the point curve. Same exact thing as far as medium contrast, strong contrast. So I'm going to go with medium contrast. We're going to jump back up to the basic panel, and I am going to then add some clarity. I'm going to add quite a bit. Actually, before I add clarity, I want to do the whites and blacks. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I'm not sure if I'm going to send this over to a plugin. And I usually send it over to the plugin before any clarity is added to the image. So right now, we're going to get a quick white point. I'm going to hold in the Shift key and double click on whites. And it made it a lot brighter. And double click on blacks. And it brought blacks down okay. It might be a little too bright for me. I'm not sure. So I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key, and it's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, and just click on the white slider. And nothing is really clipping or bleeding through. Usually you could do this, you could see you'll have some colors clipping through. You could see I have blues clipping. And then where it's white, that means red, green, and blue are clipping. And then if you see any red or green spots in the image, that's where the red is clipping or the green is clipping all by itself. So I'm just going to bring this down by eye. I'm not going to worry about a real, kind of clinical lab accepted white point. I'm just going to bring it down by eye. And I kind of like it right there. I thought it was just a little too bright when I used that automatic white point by holding in the Shift key. So I kind of like it right there. We're going to add some vibrance, not a lot. I'm not going to add any saturation at all. So I kind of like it right there. Now at this point, if I used a plugin, I would probably come over here and take sharpening down to 0. And I would send it over to a plugin from this point. So just for the sake of argument, I am going to create another virtual copy. And if I do end up sending this to a plugin, it will be this second virtual copy that I'll send. In the meantime, I'm going to continue and finish processing the image in Lightroom with this virtual copy. Now I'm going to bring clarity up considerably. And I like that. I think I'm done with the basic panel. I don't think I need to do anything with split toning. Now the HSL panel, do I want to try to enhance any of these rocks in the image? I guess that's sandstone in the image. So uh, like yellows, I could make it brighter, and oranges probably. I mean, do I really want to make it brighter? Do I just want to increase saturation? Don't like that either. Um, I could get a targeted adjustment right here and be in the saturation, and I could just maybe drag saturation up just a little bit. And those of you that didn't watch the last episode, this is the targeted adjustment tool, and when you click on it, your cursor will turn into the tool. And if you go over something you want to increase, in this case we're in the saturation sub-tab of the HSL Color B&W tab. If I click on something, let's do the sky. Let's say I want to increase the sky right here. If I click on the sky, the cursor will disappear, so you won't see what I'm doing. So I'm going to left click on the sky. It's disappeared. Now I just push my mouse straight up, and you can see that the blue slider and the purple sliders are moving up. And you can see that's how you could target a specific color in the image, or something specifically in the image that you want to increase its in this case color saturation. So I want to see what I could do with these rocks in out here. So I'm going to click on it. I'm left clicking, and I'm pushing my mouse straight up, and you can see that the orange and the yellow sliders are moving when I do this. See them? So I'm moving those up a little bit. Just a little bit. I don't think it needs to be that strong. I don't think there's much needs. This is a naturally beautiful image, a naturally beautiful scene. I don't think we really need to enhance the colors at all. It helps when you're there, because a lot of times when you're there, you actually saw what the intensity of the colors of these rocks. And when you take the photograph with a digital camera, a lot of times that isn't automatically translated into the digital image. It's just going to be flatter, and you could recreate what you remember it being in your mind's eye by using these controls in the HSL Color B&W tab and whatnot. So that's that. Now, as I was zoomed in earlier, I did see that there was some noise here. So yeah, some noise up in the sky. So what we're going to do is I am going to, just as I normally do, move noise reduction up to something, and in this case 60. And I drag around the image and look around. And that actually looks like it just barely got rid of it. Now I could try bringing it down to 50. And I could see that it's a little more. No, that actually looks pretty good. All right, 50 looks good. Let's go down to 40. And again, you know, this is a trade-off here, kind of a balancing act. You want to use as much noise reduction as possible to remove the noise, but you don't want to obliterate any detail. And again, you want to add as much sharpening as possible, but you don't want to enhance noise. Now at 40, I could see noise. At 50, it was really borderline. I got a feeling 50 is the number. 45, I could still see a little. So I'm going to leave a noise reduction right on 50, and I'm going to zoom out. And I'm just going to pick a number for sharpening, like there. Now I'm interested in sharpening, you know, the rocks. I don't really care about the rest of it as much. So I'm going to bring up sharpening quite high. And the reason why is one thing I have never really did in the previous episodes, but I actually do quite often. All right, we enhanced a little bit of noise in this rock. So I'm at 79, so I'm going to bring this down to 70. That looks better. Now, I probably enhance noise up in the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask it out. So I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key. It's Alt if you have PC, Option if you have a Mac. Click on the masking slider. And I'm just going to move that to the right. And anything that is white is what the sharpening is most being applied to. And where it's black is it's not getting sharpening applied to it. So right about there. That's good. So I have a nice sharp noise reduced image now. I'm going to go down to transform, nothing done there. Effects, I like to put light. When I say light, that means I only use dark vignettes, but I don't like them heavy-handed. I like them lighter. A little light vignette. It helps draw everyone's attention towards the middle of the image. So I kind of like that. So that is it. I am completely done in Lightroom. Now, I'm not 100% sure that the plugins I typically use would really make this image much better. But for the sake of argument and for those of you that are interested, I will send this over to the plugins that I typically use, and let's just see how it compares to this Lightroom processed image. And by the way, there is the original image and there is the Lightroom image. All right, so we have this image here. I stopped short of adding any clarity to it, and I brought the detail sharpening all the way down. And the reason why I do that is when you sharpen without doing any noise reduction, you're going to be sharpening the noise, and it's harder to get rid of. The noise is harder to get rid of. And I like to use Topaz Denoise to get rid of noise. So I'm going to send this image over to Topaz Denoise. And because it's a virtual copy, and well, even if it was a raw file, it's going to create a TIFF file for us to edit in Denoise. And it was a Nikon D7200, and there is not a preset for a Nikon D7200, but I still kind of like to use the presets, so we're just going to kind of bop around the presets. What I found was these AW1 presets work nicely for crop sensor Nikon cameras, even though this isn't a crop sensor camera. The AW1 isn't a crop sensor camera. And if I put it at 400, you could see it did a nice job pretty much smoothing out the noise there. And what I typically do is then I go over to this side here, and where it says add grain, I take that down to 0. A lot of times if you add a little bit of fine grain to an image, it'll give the illusion that it's sharper than it actually is. So that's it. That's done. I don't really waste a lot of time here. And I trust Denoise. It does a really nice job. The preview, I mentioned this in the last video or one of the previous videos, the preview you get in Denoise looks horrible. It always looks way worse, that you're really smoothing things out so much that it looks like you're making a painterly look or giving your image a painterly look. And that's not the case. It's just poor resolution preview that you get in here. So once it finally is done processing and we're back in Lightroom, you'll see that it's fine. So I get rid of the noise first, and then usually I'll bring it over to another plugin. If I was going black and white, I'd bring it to Nik Silver FX Pro. It's my favorite plugin for black and white. But we're not going to go black and white on this. I think I like the color. So I'm going to bring it over to OnOne Effects 10. Now I get a lot of emails because the OnOne has come out with OnOne Raw, and I do own OnOne Raw. It's on my MacBook. I am learning all the ins and outs of OnOne Raw, and I will be doing videos on OnOne Raw exactly like I did videos on the other OnOne products. So look for those in the future. All right, so this is our noise reduced image, and here is our virtual copy. And just at this magnification, you're not going to see any difference at all. But I am going to get rid of this virtual copy just to make it a little less clumsy or complicated to look at stuff down here. So here again is our original image. Here is our image completely processed in Lightroom. Now here is our image that we just sent over to Denoise. Now I'm going to send it over to OnOne Effects. And I'm going to send the original image and send it right over to Effects. And I'm not 100% sure the look. Like I said, I wasn't sure to begin with if this was something I really wanted to send over to OnOne Effects or to any plugin for that matter, because I think the composition is strong. The image itself stands up on its own, and we really just had to process a raw file, which is what Lightroom is made for, and it looked great. So what I want to do though is I want to try this sunshine filter. It kind of will warm it up a little bit with this natural look. If you go right here, we have this drop down and we have some preset settings for this sunshine filter. There's glow. I don't like that. Never like any of the glow ones. I know a lot of people do. Strong. All you got to do is hover over these and it will render the effect onto the image. All right, let's see. Sunshine and natural look almost identical to me. So there's with the effect off, there's with it on, there's off on. You can see it added quite a bit of contrast in here. Let's go back to the natural and see what that. Pretty much same thing. All right, I'm just going to stay with that. I like that kind of warmer cast it gave the rocks. So I like that. Just for the heck of it, I'm just going to try a tone enhancer. It's going to do an auto level. And actually, I kind of like the auto level. So I'm going to leave that. And then we're just going to do the dynamic contrast, which I typically will do. And that seems a bit heavy-handed. So I'm going to bring that down to about half its strength, even more so, maybe around 40. And I'm going to turn it off and on, off and on. We'll try it at 50. The opacity is what I'm switching. And we'll take a look at it off, on, off, on. I'd say 50 is all right. It might be a touch strong, but we'll go with that. Then we're going to go to a vignette. And we'll try the soft one right off the bat. Kind of like the soft vignette. I'm just going to change the size a little bit by pushing the slider to the right. When you push it to the right, you're pulling it backwards, pulling it off the image. And there's might be still a little bit too strong or too encroaching upon the image. I like that right there. So we're done. So we're going to click apply. And this will send this over back into Lightroom, and we can look at our 3 results. All right, here is the original image unprocessed. Here is our processing done in Lightroom. And here is our processing done in Lightroom and On1 and Topaz Denoise. And if you want to look at them all, is you select them all and you hit N on your keyboard for survey mode, and you could see that we could see all 3. I call it survey mode. It's not called that though. It's called, what's it called? Yeah, it's called survey view. And then we'll hit Shift Tab to get rid of all the tabs. And again, here on the top left is the original image. The second one over to the right, this image to the right, I should say, is the one that is totally processed in Lightroom only. And then down below that is the image that was processed in Lightroom, then Topaz Denoise to remove the noise, and then OnOne Effects 10 to add a few filters, a sunshine filter, dynamic contrast filter, the tone enhancer, and a vignette. And that's it. That's everything. I love this scene. I think it's a great scene. Thank you, Zoran, for sharing it with me and sharing it with us. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.